This is one of the most contentious issues in the realm of digital finance. In the event if Ripple decimated half of the XRP in circulation, what would transpire? The nuclear option is the name given to this scenario by crypto experts. The market dynamics could be rewritten in an instant by just one decision. This documentary-style investigation will examine the ins and outs of a large-scale XRP burn, including its mechanics, mathematics, and macro-scale implications. For the sake of pure speculation alone, based on the principles of blockchain technology and economic theory. First, we will go over the basics. A burn address is what? Token burning refers to the practice of sending cryptocurrency to an address where it cannot be recovered on blockchain networks. The tokens are rendered permanently inaccessible on the XRP ledger due to the absence of a known private key at that address. Nevertheless, this does not constitute physical destruction. The coins are technically still there on the ledger, but they are no longer circulating. Historically, Ripple has burned through smaller amounts of tokens, mostly transaction fees, but nothing on the scale of erasing tens of billions of tokens. Why, therefore, would a business ever think of doing anything so drastic? Supply and demand is the simplest way to put it. There are a total of 100 billion XRP coins in circulation, with about 50% held in escrow by Ripple. Some see the planned progressive release of these assets as a price cap and an overhang that slows speculative momentum, even if their intended purpose was to support ecosystem growth and collaborations. Burning a substantial amount could, in theory, alleviate that strain. This is the theory supporting mathematics. Any open market price is determined by the product of the circulating supply and the per unit valuation. In order to keep the overall market capitalization constant, the equilibrium price would have to rise if supply was reduced in half and demand remained constant. If there were 100 billion XRP, each worth 50 cents, and the market cap was $50 billion, then a burn lowering supply to 50 billion would result in the same demand. Maintain the same capitalization, we need to raise the price to around $1. Investor actions, liquidity, and confidence will determine the actual magnitude of the effect. However, there is more to supply shock economics than just numbers. Liquidity in the cryptocurrency market is set by public opinion. Burns can trigger a feedback cycle in which holders are less inclined to sell, traders expect appreciation, and new buyers enter the market in search of limited supplies, all because they suggest long-term scarcity. As demonstrated historically with Ethereum's fee burn mechanism, which was launched in 2021 and aided to its subsequent rises by quietly tightening supply, this psychological multiplier frequently outweighs the mathematical one. What if, for the sake of argument, Ripple burned 50 billion XRP in a nuclear option? Those tokens would be permanently removed from the escrow wallets as a result of the instant effect of a permanent ledger transaction. Data scientists and traders would be able to immediately analyze this occurrence because it would be available to everyone on the blockchain, along with the timestamp, transaction hash, and address. A flurry of activity would break out on social media, algorithmic pricing changes, liquidity pools, and exchanges that track overall supply would update their data. A number of immediate and distant effects on the economy may result from such a change. Compression of supplies comes first. Half of the tokens have been used, increasing the value of the remaining supply in relation to demand. Second, your credibility may suddenly skyrocket. Ripple may gain investors' trust if they portray the company as giving up some of its corporate interests in order to promote decentralization and market health. Finally, the ever-changing market. As market participants adapt to the new situation, short-term price fluctuations may become quite dramatic. The gaps in liquidity may worsen before conditions settle. Fourthly, there could be regulatory repercussions if officials investigate the motivations behind the burn and wonder if it was a manipulation or merely a reorganization. A future definition of XRP's classification could be aided by clarity on it. However, there are unquestionably dangers. Instead of creating new value, token burning simply redistributes the value that already exists among the holders. A decreased supply may not result in any increase in pricing if demand decreases or if macroeconomic conditions become weaker. In addition, the escrow system is a key component of Ripple that helps keep institutional partnerships releases predictable. Killing off that supply could, in all honesty, make future strategy decisions more difficult. A massive fire like that could make people rethink the wisdom of decentralizing the network from a governance standpoint. Although XRP ledger validators are not directly affiliated with Ripple, the company's unilateral choice would bring attention to ongoing worries about corporate control. The community's modification process would likely necessitate multi-party certification for such a burn to remain legitimate. From a technological standpoint, XRP's consensus mechanism prevents supply fluctuations through the use of unknown keys in ledger transactions. In order to burn Ripple's escrow, which is mostly protected by time-locked smart contracts, certain requirements would have to be met. Anyone keeping tabs on the network would be able to see the intricate but transparent process unfold in real time. We can now examine analogs from the past. A number of other projects have made strategic use of token burning. As a means of controlling inflation, Binance routinely destroys sections of BNB. A very large portion of Stellar's supply, 55 billion lumens, was burnt in 2019, making it a close technical relative of XRP. The initial increase in XLM price was due to that occurrence, but the market eventually leveled off, proving that scarcity, even with burns, isn't a guarantee of long-term price surges in the absence of persistent demand and ecosystem usefulness. Following this pattern, a 50 billion XRP burn may have a significant impact in the near term, leading to a possible multiplication as markets readjust. But the sustainability of the asset in the long run would be totally dependent on its utilization. In what ways does the XRP ledger facilitate payments, remittances, and tokenized asset transactions? To sum up, the sustainability of a high valuation is dictated by the network's utility, not the burn itself. Whale behavior is an additional factor to think about. Unlike retail traders, large holdings, also called whales, react differently to shocks to the supply. While it consolidates positions in preparation for a smaller float in the future, on-chain measures would probably show accumulation before any potential burn. Then, selling pressure could be brief, due to profit-taking. To predict when prices will stabilize following many market cycles, analysts frequently use liquidity shock curves to model such reactions. Looking at the nuclear option scenario in the perspective of macroeconomics begs the philosophical question: can artificial scarcity be a viable alternative to organic growth in the long run? Perhaps trust is the determining factor. A temporary alignment with decentralization, in which Ripple totally transfers management of the ledger to its ecosystem, would boost confidence worldwide. However, it can backfire if investors perceive it as an effort to influence markets or placate them. And lastly, how about that hypothetical $10,000 price tag per XRP? From an economic perspective, getting to those levels would mean XRP processing a large portion of the world's settlements, which would include trillions of dollars in liquidity flowing through the network. Such valuations presuppose almost complete migration from old banking lines and practically universal adoption of Ripple's technology, which is not inherently impossible. As an upper bound, it is helpful in educational modeling, not a prediction for the near future, but a signpost of the potential meaning of full global utility. Balance is the takeaway from this thought exercise. Burning tokens can rebalance supply and show confidence, but the truth is that real value comes from using them. Like other digital asset projects, Ripple's future is dependent on adoption. Businesses, people, and banks use XRP for its intended purpose, which is to facilitate the fast and inexpensive transfer of wealth across borders.